Welcome to My Dad's Story. Thanks for taking the time to be in here today, Jason. Appreciate that a lot. All right, let's get into this. Jason is a husband, a father, a veteran of 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, a teacher who's taken a year off for sabbatical here, and we're really glad you're here to join us. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Where were you born?
I was born right down the road in Garland, Texas.
Garland, Texas, okay.
Specifically, I was born at the Baylor Hospital in downtown Dallas.
Ah, okay.
So this part of Texas is home. It's been everywhere. Anytime when I was in the Army and it was time to come home on leave or whatever, I always came back here. Had a lot of opportunities to maybe go somewhere else, but this was home and I needed to come home.
Right.
Especially after 2 tours, it was time to come home.
Right. What do you consider your hometown?
Garland is always going to be home.
Hometown?
Because that's where I grew up. The house I grew up in, my grandparents bought that in 1963, and it's still in there. It's still in my mom's name.
Right.
It's confusing sometimes. I'll say my mom and my dad, but it's actually my grandparents. I was raised from my dad's parents.
Okay, got it.
So my grandmother and my grandfather raised me since pretty much birth. My father and mother, that wasn't the most harmonious marriage, and pretty much after I was born, my mom kicked off to parts unknown, never saw her again. And then, so my dad went to his father and asked him, I can't take care of him, could you take care of him? And so pretty much from birth, pretty much about 3 weeks after I was born, I was in that house.
Right. And you didn't know any better for a while, did you?
Didn't know any better. I didn't know actually until 4th grade that my mom and my dad were actually my grandparents. The way my dad was still in my life, but he was more of kind of an older brother.
Right.
He's got a younger brother, my uncle, and we were all sort of raised as, I was the baby of the 3 of us. So there's my biological father and my uncle, and then there's me, but we were all, like I said, we were all raised sort of as 3 brothers.
Right.
And it was, my dad was in my life, but I didn't know he was my dad. He was just, that guy that came into my life, beard, long hair.
Right.
And
how old was he when you were born?
He was 20, and my mother was very young. She was 17 at the time. They were still kind of in high school, but my dad was a product of the time. He was a boomer, and also the drug culture too. So unfortunately, he dropped out of high school when he was 11. 11th grade is when he actually dropped out. He just flat out dropped out of high school.
Right.
And then he sort of bounced around, and then he got his certification as a plumber. And to him, that was the best thing. He did that to him his entire life. He liked it because he was very much an introvert. He kind of left alone. He liked being left alone. Mm-hmm. He worked, he did his job, went home, and got up and did it again. He was always in my life, checking on me. We did stuff together, but it wasn't really a fatherly thing. It was more of just an older brother. We went to hang out with movies, and once in a while maybe spend time over at his place, and that was about it. But 99% of the time it was his parents. Those 2, my grandfather, the oldest of 12 children, born in Philadelphia. My grandmother was the baby. She was the youngest of 10 children. She grew up in this teeny tiny little 1-room shack up outside of Chakota, Texas, picking cotton. She started picking cotton when she was 5.
Oh, wow.
And she made it through that. Her older brothers, 3 of them served in World War II. 2 of them highly decorated. One brother, Alan, was in a bunch of battles in Europe. He got a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star, shrapnel in his thigh, and kind of came home a little shell-shocked. Her other brother came home. He had been in the Philippines. He fought up the Philippines, and then was also part of the occupation army in Japan when he got out. But they all went home and picked cotton until it was time to go to the city.
So one was on the European side, and the other one's on the Pacific side?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, they did that after the Sullivan brothers. They kind of split as much as they could.
And then the other brother, he got out. He was actually supposed to be in the artillery and go to Europe, but he got a hardship discharge, and they sent him home to take care of the farm, as it were.
Right.
And then my grandfather is very, very interesting man. He his old man, he never referred to him in any form except the old man or, well, that SOB.
Oh, wow.
There was no love lost between each other. And he skipped out. He finished 8th grade and he skipped out and just kind of saw the world. He was 11 years old. He hitchhiked all the way down from Philadelphia to Georgia and spent the night in Georgia in a bus terminal. And he was asleep, and they did a raid on the local police did a raid on the bus terminal because of all the homeless guys. And this cop comes in, looks at him, and says, "Okay, put your head down, Sonny." And then after they arrested all the vagrants, he told them, "Okay, get out of here." So
wow.
he got lucky.
Yeah.
And then he thumbed it all the way back to Philly. Nobody knew. Nobody had any idea he was gone.
Oh, wow.
And so when he turned, I think he said he was 14, he fudged his birth certificate and joined the Merchant Marines.
Okay.
He was a 14-year-old merchant seaman going back and forth across the Atlantic. Spent some time in Europe, ferrying troops back and forth, and then he did some time going up and down the coast. He went to Cuba a few times doing ore runs, picked up stuff like copper and.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always tell this story that the little 14-year-old kid down in this place called, I think, Nicaro on the Cuban coast, and 14-year-old kid got so bombed out of his brains, drunk on rum and coke, that he was sick for a whole day, throwing up over this bridge down in Nicaro. And until he was in his late 70s, he said he would never touch rum after that.
Wow. How did they meet when one of them was in Philadelphia and the other one was in Texas?
Well, so when Dad left the Merchant Marines to join the Army, so he was a very underage vet. He was 15 when he got in the Army. He used his seaman papers, and so he got in the Army, and he was posted down to Alabama. And then with the war over, he got out in 46 because everybody was like, you're way too young to be in this. So he got an honorable discharge. He went back to Philly, signed up in the Navy, did 3 years in the Navy. And then when the Air Force had just broken off from the Army Air Corps, and so he got sweet talked into joining the Air Force. So he goes and joins the Air Force, and they send him down to Shepherd Air Force Base over in Wichita Falls to do boot camp. And
Oh, okay.
he was supposed to do aircraft maintenance mechanic up in Illinois, but he's like, I don't want to do that. So he bombed out of that. And so the Air Force gave him 3 choices. He could be a medic like he was in the Navy, he could be a cook, or he could be a military police. And so he took lab tech. So he stayed at Shepherd. And then so that's how he got to Texas with the Air Force. And so on weekends he kicked down with all of his airman buddies, they kicked down to Dallas to go and be wild airmen with the rest of the guys. And how he met my grandmother, he and his buddy were at Fair Park. And he was on leave, and he racked out under a tree, and his buddy, they were, he would never admit it, but we all figured he was sleeping off a hangover. And his buddy sees these 2 women walking by, and he's like, "Hey, girls." One of them was my grandmother. She was actually visiting and had moved down to work at the Dallas, at Southwestern Bell's, that telephone company down in downtown Dallas, and she was working down there. And that's how they met. Was he wakes up, his buddy's like, "Come on, hey, these 2 girls want to go out and do stuff." So they met, and then so he started going AWOL. He started skipping out on his tour to come see my grandmother. And so he'd go AWOL for 30 days and go back, and he had a lieutenant that was really kind of his buddy, and so he kind of kept him out of the guardhouse. But we always joked that he needed Velcro on his stripes, because he'd get senior airman, and then he'd do something stupid like
rip them right off.
He'd just rip them right off. He needed Velcro for that. So they started dating, and then after about 2 months, he popped the question. They got married at Oak Lawn Methodist Church in Dallas, and they were married for 65 years.
Oh, wow.
Until
That's
he,
awesome.
and it was always something that I looked up to, because I just remember them always. It was just a beautiful marriage.
Yeah.
Seeing them, and I wanted to have a marriage just like Dad and
Right.
Mom did.
I'll get back to that part real quick, but
Mhm.
I'm stunned by the Army, Navy, Air Force. Now, he hit the trifecta there.
He did.
Right? Does that happen a whole lot, or that's the first time I ever heard of that?
Well, the only reason he
and
didn't,
Merchant Marines.
and the Merchant Marines,
Let's
the only
not
reason
forget
he
that.
couldn't join the Marine Corps, they said he was too skinny.
Okay.
So he tried the Marine Corps first, because he had seen John Wayne charging up a hill, and he wanted all that.
Right.
Well, the Marines were like, "Nah, you're too skinny."
Yeah.
So then he joined the Merchant Marines, and then he used his papers to get, like I said, get in the Army.
That's not possible today, is it?
Not anymore. I mean, you can, he bleached his birth certificate and tapped some stuff on it, and they took it, and they're like, "All right, sure, whatever."
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
take anybody at the time.
We'll
Now,
take-
was this during WW2?
This was WW2. This was
Okay.
kind of the tail end. He was in the Merchant Marines in 44.
Okay.
Did a year in the Merchant Marines, and then came home, and then he enlisted in the Army, and then he was in the Army for about a year and a half before they caught him up to him and says, "You're not 18."
Right.
So, but Truman had given an amnesty to all because they knew so many kids had
Right.
signed up. A lot of kids had medals and
Right.
stuff, and so they wanted to make sure they kept him. So he got out on an amnesty. He got an honorable discharge and kept all of his ribbons and such.
But from the Army, he then went to the Navy
Mhm.
for 3 years, you said?
Did 3 years in the Navy. It was pretty uneventful. He was a corpsman. He was a medic on a aircraft carrier called the USS Kearsarge.
Okay.
And that didn't do much. It just went up and down, and he got bored, and then he was getting ready to re-enlist and hopefully go to Europe or Asia or anywhere. And so this Air Force recruiter comes up and says, "Hey, we just broke off from the Army, clean sheets,
Okay.
good chow." And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, okay, I'll take that."
The clean sheets got him. I
Yeah, the
think,
clean sheets and the good chow, and
Yeah.
he took that.
So how long was he in the Air Force then?
He was he was regular Air Force he did his 4 years, miraculously.
And what is regular Air Force?
That's his active. He was active duty Air Force for 4 years.
Okay.
He got out, and then he went back in and did the Air National Guard, and then he finally retired out of the Air Force Reserves.
So how old was he at this time?
Second?
How old was that then? Was he like in his 30s?
He was in his mid-30s.
Mid-30s? Okay.
Yeah. So he had
Wow.
he had a very adventurous life. He got his GED while he was in the Air Force, and he got an award for that because he forced himself to learn a new word. He took a Reader's Digest every day and learned a new word and made sure to use that word every day.
Nice.
And so he was very, very intelligent. He was a voracious reader. If you look at encyclopedias at our house, he's got notes through it and scribbles
That's so
here.
cool.
I mean, he was a very well-educated, he didn't have the paper, but he had the knowledge.
The knowledge. Yeah.
Ask him about anything, and he could talk about anything.
Probably a lot better than the paper anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in the days when the encyclopedias were either door-to-door salesman or you got them at the Safeway or the whatever the Kroger's nowadays. You would get at least in my day, you would get them like that was one week they would give you the A's. You study the A's, and then hopefully the next week you got the B's.
And that's how we got ours too.
Yeah, nice.
So we built up our collection that way.
Right. So then they met in Wichita. Wait, she was in Dallas, he was in Wichita Falls, and then they met, and then they got married. And then for 65 years, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a great.
It was a good marriage.
Right.
They lived in all different places. She worked for the phone company for quite a few years, and then when he got a job on this place called Northern Telecom. It was a old telecommunications company that was Canadian, but the American subsidiary was based out of Nashville. And Mom got him a job there. She told him, "Hey, there's an opening for a night guard," and he's like, "Well, I'll wait." She says, "No, you go right now and get that job." Well, the guy that hired him had actually hired another guy before him, but he was so impressed with my grandfather's papers that he's like, "No, I'll take you instead."
Right.
So he worked there and worked his way all the way up for about 35 years. He was with Northern Tel. He worked his way all the way up to head of security. He did a lot of DOD and a lot of stuff that he couldn't talk about until after he got out. I mean,
Right.
He did a lot of they did a lot of liaison work, they set up the phones and communications, satellites and stuff like that. And this was at the height of the Cold War, so there was a lot of sneaky stuff that they were doing against the Soviets. And so he was always talking about, well, can't open my briefcase, there's stuff in there. I'm like, oh, okay.
Did that make you want to open the briefcase?
And say, well, you tell a kid, don't open that. Oh, okay.
Go to sleep, Grandpa. Go to sleep. And so how did you feel when you found out in the 4th grade that your brother was actually your dad?
It was pretty crazy. It wasn't so much my dad, because I grew up with this mentality that my grandmother was my mom. She said that I used to hug her all the time and say, Mom, Mom, Mom. And then they told us, and supposedly in 4th grade, we had a class we were talking about our parents. And the first time I've learned about this, I got up in front of the class and said, my mother's actually named Lisa, and I hate her guts. So then, of course, my grandmother got the phone call, like, let's sit down and have a little chat. But it didn't really affect me when I found out Mark was my dad. It was more of a, oh, okay. Ed's still my dad.
Right.
And Mary's still my mom.
That's who raised you, right? So, if you hate your mom.
I didn't hate her. It was just more of my grandmother used to ask me this all the time, do you ever want to meet her? Do you ever want to talk to her? They kind of knew where she lived, and my dad kind of knew where she lived. And they would ask me, do you want to see her? Do you want to meet her? And I'm like, I mean, she's never been in my life. I don't have any memories of her. So and it was like that for years, that I was like, I don't have anything to say to her, because it would be just like me meeting somebody on the street.
I mean, she left like real early.
Real early.
Yeah, like you weren't even a year old?
I wasn't even a year old. I was just a couple of weeks old.
Oh, wow.
And she kind of kicked off. And
is she still alive now, or do you know, or would you?
When I came home,
care to know?
Well, when I came home from Afghanistan, I was in this mentality of wanting to kind of wanting to sort of explore things. So I found her on Facebook, and we did meet. And well, I found out why she was very much not in her life. She was a very, very adventurous spirit. She was a biker chick and heavy into drugs and drinking and such. So I was like, okay. And then that hard life caught up with her. So I came home from Afghanistan in 13, and we met. I finally found her on Facebook in 2015, and then unfortunately by 17, her body was racked with cancer, so she died fairly quick after we met. So there was just enough to know her and go, okay, check the box. I met her, and that's about it.
Yeah, nothing when she died. There was
nothing really there in terms of, it was like, yeah, that's okay.
Right. And
when I was, talking to her, she would say things about my dad, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, but if you were such a devoted person, then why did you leave, and this and that? But she never would answer that, and I just sort of let it go.
Right. I guess at that time it didn't really matter, because you had, a matriarch in your family, which is I
had a very strong relationship with
Mary.
Mom. Yeah.
Right.
And sadly, though, the patriarchs of the family, I lost, unfortunately. My father developed rheumatism in his early 40s. He had rheumatoid arthritis, he was racked with pain and such. And so, the woman he married, my stepmother, nobody liked her. She was just a very difficult person to be around, very loud, very obnoxious. Always used to hang it over him that she made more money than he did. And so he got pushed to the limit, and eventually he did decide that it was time to, and when in early 2000 he took his own life. And that was pretty rough on all of us. And so my biological parents are gone, and then the day I left for my first tour in Iraq, I call home, says, hey, this is my last phone call for a while, I'm getting on the plane. My grandmother says, Dad just had a heart attack. I'm sorry, not a heart attack, stroke. And I'm like, wow. And I tell my top sergeant, he's like, sorry, Owens, there's not much we can do about it. We're wheels up in like 2 hours. You're we'll figure it out when we get overseas. So the stroke that he had, from what I learned on later on, the doctor's like, this should have killed him, but he held on. I was gone for 8 months in country, and I got my 2 weeks of leave, and I came home and saw him, and he grabbed my hand because he was paralyzed on the left side of his body. And so he grabs my hand with his good hand, and he's like, my boy's home, my boy's home. And so a couple of days later, he passed away. And my uncle was like, yeah, he was just holding on till you got home safe. I'm like, I kind of figured that out myself.
Right. And how did that make you feel?
That was rough because I only had 2 weeks to, he had a military funeral, and then I got to stay home for an extra week. I told my command back in Iraq, and they're like, hey, take as much time as you need. So we stayed home, had the funeral. And it was rough because, father was gone, and now my grandfather was gone, and I never got a chance to really sit down with him because he'd been in war. He'd been in World War II, and he'd been in Korea, but never got a chance to really sit down and tell him, like, hey, what was it like for you versus what it was like for me? And he really wanted to do that, and I never got a chance to do that. I just feel a little bad about that. But
was that the reason you joined? Was your grandfather or father? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, he used to hear stories about all the things he did, and the military was always sort of in our family. Like my grandmother's family, she had 3 brothers that were in, and then Ed's family he went in, and then his brother was a Marine in Korea. He had another brother in the Army so it's pretty much been in the DNA.
Right. Well, the first question, and this may just be, what was it like having older parents? Because if they're grandparents, that must mean they're significantly older. What was it like growing up when you went, they're a lot older, or did that even?
It didn't really register because, again, being attached to them from such an early age, I didn't see them as older. My grandmother went to all the school functions. She went on field trips with me, and every teacher and every person that met her, everybody assumed that she was my biological mother.
Right.
And so it never really hit that they were older.
Right.
The sense of time and age didn't really hit or affect.
Right. It wasn't did your biological dad ever go to any of your events when you were in high school or anything?
He did finally make it to my high school graduation, but other than that, he was busy working. He was plumbing as a plumber. He had a very full day. He'd come home exhausted, and but he did come see me graduate from high school.
What were you like as a kid?
Oh, I was a GT kid, so I was a little ahead of my time. I was very kind of socially awkward.
Yeah.
I was a bookworm. I was reading earlier. I was reading a lot of stuff a lot earlier than a lot of kids. So I was always kind of sneaking away to the older kids section and just plop down with the book, and the teachers would find me studying these very heavy, big books and reading, novels that were way ahead of everybody else. I was at least 3 grade levels ahead of the rest of my peers.
Oh, wow.
And growing up in that environment, I was pretty awkward. I didn't know a stranger. My mom said I would talk to anybody because I just didn't feel like I was 7 or 8 or I was talking to anybody. And she'd go, God, you're gonna get kidnapped one day if you're not careful. Because I like talking to adults. I was very awkward around kids my age because I just didn't have anything to talk to them about.
Right.
I loved talking with my grandfather about everything and always bugging him and bugging my uncle because he was always watching TV and watching the news, and remember seeing the TV on and news talking about the Iran-Iraq war, the invasion of Afghanistan, and I just see all this stuff, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just knew there was a lot of heavy stuff going on when I was growing up.
And this was the very first this is the George H. Bush when we had Iraq or that?
Oh, this was.
Let's see. You were. I mean,
I'm the back end of. I was born the year of Carter, the last year of Carter,
okay. Gotcha.
and I grew up through Reagan. So.
Okay.
And my uncle got to meet Reagan. He came through Dallas, and they shook hands.
Okay.
And so he became sort of a lifelong admirer of Reagan, and so
Right.
did my dad. My grandfather was big on everything Reagan did was
Right.
yeah.
Now, your grandfather though was, if I remember correctly, and remember I'm old and I forget
Mm-hmm.
stuff real quick, but he was like he would make notes in encyclopedias,
Mm-hmm.
and so now here you are in the library,
Mm-hmm.
way advanced library stuff. So it's like that passed down a little bit.
Certainly felt that way.
Yeah.
My dad actually, he never studied for you're supposed to get a certification to get your plumber cert, and most people, it takes them 2 or 3 times. He scored a perfect score first time around, so
Wow.
it was. So we always kind of looked at it as, well, you don't always have to go to get it. You don't always have to get your paper to be a smart person.
Right.
A lot of good learning and such. And like I said, my grandfather had he was a voracious. Knowledge was something he wanted. He had seen what his old man was a scoundrel from what we heard about him, and so he promised himself he'd never be like that.
Right.
He wanted to be better than his old man. He wanted to be smarter than his old man. He never wanted to be, a guy that did petty stuff and just kind of did jack of all trades stuff. He's like, no, I want to be better than that.
Right.
And he passed that on to us. He's like, I want y'all to be better than me, be smarter than me, push yourself past me.
Right. So you were the only child as far as that age group, right? Because
Yes.
you had 2 brothers,
Mm-hmm.
but you were the only one as
Yes.
far as that. And what was that like?
Being an only child, it was a mixed bag. I mean, there were times where I was kind of lonely, kind of, somebody but that wasn't very long. For the most part, I liked being alone. It was because then I could do what I wanted to do. I could sit and, if I wanted to read, I could read. I didn't have to share, my books with somebody else. I didn't, my toys were my toys.
Right.
And I didn't have to fight for the TV in our room and such. So it wasn't terrible.
Right.
We did a lot of family stuff together. We did a lot of trips, and Dad get us in the car and we'd drive down to San Antonio, we'd drive to Galveston, we'd drive to Oklahoma City and things. So the old joke is, the backseat of a car for 16 hours driving to Albuquerque.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
So I learned to read. I learned to read, and I learned to just look out the window. And Mom would play games like, we'd play spot the license plate, get points for, oh, I got Missouri this week. Oh, I've got, we'd write it down.
Right.
And then also, just looking at the land going by, just made me really, that was exciting too, to see all the land in front of me, because it's one thing to see it from the airplane, but when you're on the ground and seeing it go by, it's just, I like it a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Were you into music a lot as a kid, or?
Classical.
Ah, okay.
I was a very strange child. I liked Wagner. I listened to Beethoven, old school bluegrass country. My grandmother was a very big on country. She loved her bluegrass. She loved her old country singers, George Strait, George Jones and Stanley Brothers.
Tammy
and
Wynette.
Tammy Wynette.
Yeah. The Grand Ole Opry, I would imagine.
Oh, she loved that. She
Yeah.
always, she liked the Brazil Brothers and all that stuff. So I grew up listening to pretty old school stuff. And yeah, I loved Wagner and Beethoven, and Dad had his old LPs out and he'd play them, and he'd get, the Berlin Philharmonic playing Richard Wagner, and man, that would be echoing through the house.
Yeah, nice. So you were like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory before. It sounds like.
I guess.
You knew a lot of stuff. You were
Yeah.
really smart, that kind of stuff. Wow. Did you pick up in school? Were you focused on the school, or were you kind of like, I would rather do my stuff than I'm?
I was immediate. I wasn't like I wasn't an A student, but I wasn't like, barely passing everything. I was kind of middle of the road, and the teachers always said I was always looking for something else. They would say, yeah, you do your homework, but then you're always like somewhere else.
Right.
So I got put in, they called it REACH. It was for the special, the gifted kids. Well, I thought something was wrong with me because, kids being kids, they can be kind of difficult on you. And I thought something was wrong with me because I got pulled out with like 2 or 3 other kids, and we were looking at flashcards and big words and such like that. And then I'd come back in and hear the kids snickering, pointing. I was like,
Right.
so I didn't know I was GT, but Mom told me later, yeah, that was for the smart kids. Oh, okay.
And I am the other spectrums. What is GT?
Well, that's the new term that teachers use. It's gifted and talented.
Okay. See, I never had to worry about that,
Yeah.
so I was either one. So.
Oh, it's not how it's cracked up to be because you're far ahead of the other kids, and you're just like, what do I?
So did you want to, after high school? Did you want to go to college, or were you going to go to college, or did you go to college?
I did go to college right
Okay.
out of high school. I went to the community college over in Richland,
Okay.
and then I did my 2 years there, and then I transferred to my first round of college was at UT Arlington.
Okay.
Got my degree in history, minored in political science and military science, and then Uncle Sam had a better offer, and so I clipped off in 2006, and off I went.
Yeah. In 2006?
Correct.
And were you excited? Who did you tell your grandfather or your dad right away?
Well, it was at the height of the war, and I didn't really have a lot of time to say goodbye. I signed my papers, and they said, "Okay, you're leaving next week." I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess I better tell the family."
Yeah.
And it was right in the middle of the war, and Dad was still a little like, "Oh no," he automatically saw the worst. He saw me being sent to the front lines, and
Right.
he watched the news all the time, so he was worried. My mom was worried, and I didn't have the heart to tell him what I was doing, so I kind of fibbed about what I was doing. I said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm going to be in the rear. I'm going to be, working on artillery pieces and guidance systems and things like that." And they're like, "Oh, okay." My job was actually what was called a forward observer, which means my job was to go forward of the line with the small units, dig in, and then start calling grid coordinates onto enemy positions.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of eyes and ears stuff, a lot of calling in grids, talking to the aircraft, flying over while getting shot at. Basically, I was with a Cav squadron in Iraq, and our job was to go find trouble, go drive around, and then the minute we take contact, I'd start calling in grids and start talking to the artillery, or if there were planes flying over, hey, drop your bomb here. But Iraq was a very different beast when I got there. By the time I got there in 2009, we were pretty much turning the lights out. We were doing more hearts and minds missions, more civil affairs units. So even fully infantry and artillery units were being converted more to do, hey, we drive into a village and say, hey, we got water and school supplies and things like that. So, we did a lot of hearts and minds missions more than the actual job we were trained to do. So that was a big change.
What was it like in Iraq? I mean, first of all, I would imagine it's really hot, but what was it like? The people, the top, the geography and everything. What was that all?
Well, I was in eastern Iraq, over more towards the Iranian border, and the people there loved us. They were very happy that we were there. The kids used to come running up to us, and we'd give them pencils and candy and things like that, and we'd sit and talk to local leaders, the local police commander or some army general or some sheikh or government official. And we'd sit there and chit chat and, what do you need? How can we help? Do you have anything that we can do? Or do you have anything for us? Any kind of intel kind of thing. And so, because I was the only person in my squad that had a college degree, my lieutenant comes up and says, "Owens, start learning Arabic. You're going to be my scribe when we get over there." I'm like, so I had 6 months to learn basic Arabic.
Wow. And?
I did. I was able to, I couldn't write it very well, but at least I was able to understand it. We had interpreters, but he didn't trust the interpreters. He
Right.
felt like they were not gonna say the full thing. So his idea was, okay, Owens, I want you to know enough Arabic to know if he's telling the truth or not when we have our conversations, or
Right.
write down information. I was like, okay. So I did that for a year.
Right. Wow. Did you ever have to fire?
Iraq, no. Like I said, rules of engagement were so much that we weren't looking for trouble.
Right.
We were just driving around doing, hearts and minds missions.
Right.
We were the last combat brigade transferred in from as a combat brigade. Everybody that came in after us were considered civil. I think they called them assistance teams, advisory assistance teams. Like they weren't there to go bang bang. They were there to, okay, where are the rebels? Where are the bad guys at?
And you said that on that side in eastern Iraq, they were kind of they liked you, and all the United States. Was it that way?
I couldn't say for the rest of the country, but for the area that we were in, the people were very friendly. They seemed to really like us. Plus, we were also up near we were up in this old, what was called the Green Line. It was what Saddam had taken the pencil and driven right down this part of Iraq and said, okay, everybody, if you're Kurdish, you're going to live on this side of the line. If you're Arab, you're going to live on this side. So we were on this Green Line trying to get the Kurds and the Arab armies to try to work together, but that didn't really work out.
Right.
But the Kurds absolutely they loved us. They would always. One of the jobs I had was to coordinate building projects on our military base with the local Kurdish workers, and so the governor, and a few of the really high, the big suits as you would call them, we used to always come in, and so I would liaison with them, and we really formed a big connection. And so they would always ask me personally. They would say, "Well, why don't you?" No, we want him to work, because he knows us and trust us. And so we were able to work together and get a lot of building projects for the local areas done. And so they'd always bring us chow, and they'd bring us little trinkets like, "Hey, I heard," one of the guys would say, "I heard you have a daughter. Here's a little necklace for her." Another guy brought me a set of tea glasses that had the Iraqi flag stenciled on it, and
oh wow,
they were good people. The Kurds, like I said, they loved us. We were probably in one of the safer areas.
Right.
But then when we had to back, when we would have to move back down to our old area, that was back on the Arab side. That was still, we get mortared every couple days, and sniper shot pop out here and there, and up and down the roads, it was a little messy. So,
what was it like with the mortar part? I mean, did it make you feel?
Did
you just get used to it after a while, or what
after a few months, you hear it, and you hear this plop, and you could almost set your watch by the time some guy we knew drove by, plump plump, drop a few mortar rounds and run. Most of them are duds anyway, because these were old Russian pieces that I guess they had gotten from their Afghan brothers, and these were, most of them, like I said, were duds. They just fall and plump.
Right. And at this time, what was it like? Were we cleaning up because we had actually defeated, or was it one of those kind of things where the rules of engagement were different?
Rules of engagement were different, but I left it. I did my year tour, and it was 2010, and 2010 was the official end of Iraqi freedom. So the Iraqi freedom was from basically 2003 to 2010. After that, then it became Operation New Dawn, and it was a totally different rule of engagement. Different units were zeroed in and rotated in and out. So I went over there at the tail end of it, and so I got to kind of see us turn the lights out. We were telling the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police, "This is your ball game now, guys. We're leaving."
Right.
And so then we left in 2010 and rotated back to the States and went through that honeymoon phase. Oh yeah, I'm home, and it was just good to be home, back in a place that had green, and because Fort Lewis is green and Iraq is not.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, every picture I would imagine is just dusty and very hot.
Very hot, very dusty, and just flat, open, and sunny all the time. And one of the few happy memories I had of there was the fact that there was no light pollution. You could see the galaxy. You could see the Milky Way up there. I mean, you could just get blinded with the stars over there.
Wow.
That was one of the few times where I used to look up and go, "Man, this is actually not bad."
Right. Did it get cold at night, or?
Not until the winters were wet and chilly, but being from Texas, it's like,
yeah, used to that, huh?
We're used to it.
Yeah. But no tornadoes. I mean, you got to give them that.
Yeah. It used to, like I say, it used to just rain a lot. We used to get sandstorms too. And then No, I've got uniforms in a box, and I can still pull it out and tap it, and sand pops out.
Oh, wow.
It's just, and it wasn't that stuff you see down in Galveston or Corpus. It was like this. It was like powdered sugar.
Right.
We called it moon dust.
Right. How long did it take you to get that sand smell and taste out of your mouth? Or was it something that stuck with you, or was it ever an issue?
I was still hacking up. It was about 8 months. I was still coughing up stuff. Like,
oh, wow. Yeah.
Kind of just, and it just, you had to, it just kind of seeped into you. It took me about a year before I finally stopped feeling that.
Right. So your first base, before you went to Iraq, your first base was where at?
So I did boot camp at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And did Forward Observer School there. And then from there, I got orders. My first duty station was Fort Lewis, Washington, with 2nd Infantry Division.
Okay. And from Fort Lewis, where did you fly to?
So Lewis, we flew into Ireland.
Oh,
and then from
all
Ireland.
the way from there? Okay.
Oh, well, this is how we went to Iraq. So we flew from Lewis. We flew from Lewis to Ireland, had a layover in Ireland, then flew from Ireland to Kuwait. Spent about a month in Kuwait getting gear, getting trucks, getting stuff set up, and then we drove into Iraq. And then when we left Iraq, we flew from Iraq, Ireland, and then back to Lewis.
So from Kuwait, when you crossed on the border, did that when it hit you and went, okay, now the crap's about to get real, or?
No, because you're in a vehicle, you're just, you're driving, you're in the belly of it. Everyone's like, we heard a guy on the radio, hey, we're crossing into Iraq, and you kind of stick your head out, and you're like, oh, looks the same.
Right.
And you go back to sleep. And so we got to our first area. We flew in, actually, let me back up a little bit. So we flew into Kuwait, and it was midnight, and the pilot tells us, yeah, it's 12 o'clock here in Kuwait City, and it's 102 degrees outside. And I thought, that's a great start to this.
Oh, wow.
102 degrees at midnight.
Oh, wow. That's a little brutal. Not a fan of hot
myself,
but
no.
So you said you were a little to yourself growing up.
Mm-hmm.
When you were you to yourself then in the Army, or?
The Army, I kind of found a sense of people that were there for the same reason. There were people that I became good friends with, that they were from every walks of life. We had guys from Washington State, we had guys from Oklahoma, we had a couple of guys from we had one kid, he was from backwoods of South Carolina, and he sounded like it too. One guy, I won't say his name, but it's the same as a very hard substance that goes on top of a cabinet.
Okay.
And he was from Florida. We even had a guy from the Philippines, so it was a very mixed unit. My daughter was born 5 months before my first tour. My daughter's an Army brat, and she's very proud of that.
Right. Cool.
She was born at the Army Hospital in Washington State, and she was about 5 months when I left.
So, then, okay, I passed that one. That's on me. You were married. When did you get married?
I got married. The woman I married, we met right before I left before I enlisted. So then we started dating. Then I enlisted. Went through boot. Got to my first duty station. We talked about it. Got married. I'd been in the Army for maybe 8 months, and then we got married. And then pretty soon she was pregnant, and she had our daughter, Elizabeth. She's my princess. She's also my little miracle baby. She was born about 2 weeks early, and she spent about a week and a half in the NICU. She had
oh, wow.
Her liver hadn't started working yet. She had apparently when she was being born, she got some liquid in up her nostrils, and she developed a lung infection. So they were pushing pretty hard for that. And I forget what the other thing was, but I was there every day and every night with her. So like I said, she's my little miracle baby.
So you met your wife here in Texas.
Yes.
And then you were in, and then she eventually moved up there?
Correct.
Okay. And so you lived together. I mean, you lived in.
We lived in base housing.
Right.
We lived on
How
base.
long were you there?
I was at Fort Lewis for 3 years. 2 years at Lewis, and then the year in Iraq. And then when I came home from Iraq, I came down on orders to Fort Carson.
Okay.
And so we got back in August of 2010, and then I left for Fort Carson in January.
And where's Fort Carson at?
Colorado Springs.
Okay. It's not a bad, especially when you come back from Iraq. I guess mountains and cold all of a sudden. Is that a difference?
Well, that altitude though.
Oh yeah.
That altitude hurt.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that hurt.
So you were excited. So you spent a year in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
You had a little. Your princess was here.
Mm-hmm.
Were you pretty excited? What did it feel like to get back home and see your princess again?
Oh, I couldn't wait for that.
Yeah.
She was, and then she's a daddy's girl through and through. She is 100% a daddy's girl. And she would, my mom would tell me when her mother would bring her over, my daughter would crawl into my old room and just sit there. And people were like, well, what's she doing? And my mom was like, well, isn't it obvious? She's looking for her dad. She knows that's where, dad is. That's where dad's room is.
Mm-hmm.
And she would just sit there.
Nice.
She'd just crawl in there and just sit, not cry, not laugh. She just.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, nice. What's her middle name?
She has two, actually. It's Marguerite Abigail.
So how did she get? How did you come up with those names?
Well, her first name comes from my great grandmother on my grandmother's side. Her mother's name was Dora Elizabeth,
okay.
And so we gave her the first name Elizabeth, and then her middle name was from her mother's grandmother as well.
Okay.
And then Abigail, because she was my first, Abigail we found out means father's pride, so I gave her Abigail because she was my first.
Very nice. I like that. That's
very
cool.
proud of her.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, what is here's a question I've been meaning to ask you. How does it make you feel when people say thank you for your service?
I feel a little kind of bashful.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's not. It's a very odd feeling. Somebody sees me in uniform, they come and say, thank my hand. They shake my hand, say thanks for your service, and I go, thank you. More like telling them, hey, thanks for remembering us. But it's more of it's kind of a humbling thing because I did what I felt was the right thing to do. I enlisted in a time of war and did my 2 tours and felt like I did what I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I wanted to be a history teacher before I actually went in the Army. I loved history, but something said I wanted to experience it. It would be one thing to teach it, but eventually these 2 wars were going to be part of the history books. And if I figured I was going to be a part, I didn't just want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to actually know what I was talking about when I would teach that part. And so I wanted to kind of not necessarily a subject matter expert, but at least put my footprint in the book.
Right. So now you came back. You spent some time with your daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and how soon was it? You were in the Army the whole time. How soon was it you did your second tour in a whole different country?
So my second tour, I came home in 2010, and my second tour, I was home for about a year. And then I left in 2012 for my second tour. And thankfully they had cut us down to, instead of doing full year tours, we only did 9-month tours, but then we got pulled out even earlier. So I only actually did about 8 months in Afghanistan. Now Afghanistan was where we did our job. That was patrols. That was everything that John Wayne and Patton warned you about. I mean, it was the Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
I was up on the Pakistani border in what they told us was probably one of the worst areas that God ever created. And I'm like, yeah, I can see why. We were way up in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
It was a total 180 from where I was in Iraq. One of the things I remember profoundly was I was standing by this river. It was, I can't remember if it was the Pesh River or I don't remember which name of it was. And I just remember standing there looking down into it. And it hit me that as a history major, I knew. I thought, somebody from the Persian Empire may have stood here. Alexander's army stood here. The British, the Russians, the Soviets, and now me. And I'm looking down into the same river that's been going by for thousands of years. Who's going to be, is somebody going to stand on this rock too and wonder, who all's been here too?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very sobering, just very like, whoa, kind of moment.
Mm-hmm. Weather the same? Was the weather the same?
No, Iraq was hot and dry. Afghanistan was like Houston on 20,000 milligrams of steroids.
Oh, wow.
The humidity was brutal.
Ugh.
Humidity and the heat. It was, ugh.
Yeah.
And
what was your job in Afghanistan?
That was one where we actually did our job. I actually went out on patrols. We went to, do a little hearts and minds stuff, but we also did a lot of, looking for bad guys, go up on the mountain and look down and support the Afghans when they were when they would go through a valley, we were supporting them. And we did a lot more of our jobs than I did it was like a 180. It was like Iraq, I was a hearts and minds. Over there, it was what I expected to do was combat.
Was it more urban or was it more out in country?
Out in country. It was a lot more out in country. I mean, there was where we were. There was these little villages popped up here and there, but it was still very much out in the middle of nowhere.
And different group of guys. So your guys you knew here were different now. And
this was a different unit, different thinking, and good guys too. But you always remember your first, and
right.
I was thinking a lot more fondly about my guys in Iraq than I did in Afghanistan. But
What was your feeling? I mean, did you ever see? And this is a stupid question, and forgive me. Ever see death in Afghanistan?
Yes, to both. I saw Afghanistan, yes. Iraq, no. I said we didn't really do a lot of our job in Iraq, but Afghanistan, that's where we started seeing. That's where I started seeing the stuff happen. We got it more into. Now the stuff I saw was more on a large scale stuff. I talk to airplanes flying over and they drop a bomb on a fighting position and see stuff blow up, and guys say, "Hey, you got 2 with that guy," or "Hey, you got 3 with that one." So mine was more of a, "Oh, I didn't see them, I just saw the after effects." And
right.
People told me, "Oh yeah, you got that." I went, "Oh, okay."
Anybody in your unit or anybody that ever?
We lost 2 guys in Iraq to an IED. And I was in an IED. My truck got blown up with a pretty heavy bit of explosives when I was in Iraq, and kind of rattled me around a little bit, and got my Purple Heart for that. And then Afghanistan, a couple of the guys that we lost were unfortunately self-inflicted. These guys were, I don't know if they were too long in country or what, but
Right. When you say you hit an IUD, what was that? I mean, that had to have been like, wait, what happened?
Well,
flat tire, or what was going on here?
It sounded like a shotgun blast going right next to your head.
Oh, wow.
And for the longest time, I didn't want to go to a Seahawks game because we were actually on our way back from we were dropping off school supplies to this little village, and we were driving back. We'd already started kind of downgrading our gear. I was in the belly of the truck, and it got hit. And right before we got hit, I remember talking about my platoon sergeant was talking about us getting together, everybody when we get back home to go to a Seahawks game, and we're like, "Oh yeah, it sounds boom." I don't remember much after that.
Yeah.
Kind of rattles your brain a little bit.
Wow. Were you convalescent or anything, or?
No, pretty much back to work. From what I was told, we got hit and our driver got knocked unconscious, and so we had to. So I got out. They dropped the ramp, and I got up to the front, pulled him out, and then dragged him back and did quick first aid on him and put him in the belly of the truck. And we were asking around if everybody was okay, and could anybody do the driving? I'm like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So the problem was the hatch to the truck was blown open, so it couldn't shut.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm driving, and our engine was jacked up, so it couldn't. We couldn't get up above like 25 miles an hour, and I'm pushing the gas as hard as it can because I'm trying to get us back and I'm trying to get us out of this area, this bad area. And this my platoon sergeant's like, "Oh, can't you make it go any faster?" I'm like, "I'm pushing the pedal as far as it's gonna go." And he's like,
wow.
So I get us back to the camp. We're driving through, and I didn't know how bad our truck looked until I got out. And I remember pulling into the motor pool where the trucks to repair it, where we take things to get the trucks repaired. And I'm sitting there, and my buddy's like, "Okay, Owens, we can go now." And I'm like, "Okay, okay, Owens, we can go now. Okay, let's go." And he finally just grabs the back of my uniform and yanks me out. And I got down, took about 3 steps, and just bleh.
Oh, yeah.
They took us back to the aid station, and they were checking me out, and I couldn't hear anything. People were talking to me, and I was yelling at them. My head was all spinny, and I had a horrible headache. I threw up again, and so they put us on light duty for a couple of days, and then 2 of us got sent down, and they were told, "Yeah, you guys have got concussions." And we're like, "Oh, okay."
That's what it's like, huh?
So, yeah, then they put us in. So then we get back to this what they always joke about. You either need to get hit in the beginning or near the end. Well, we got hit in the end. We had a month to go in country, and that's when I got hit. So we got back to the States, and we had our big welcome home ceremony, big parade, on the parade field. All the units are there. And then we had our little unit ceremony where our colonel comes by and pins us with all our medals and awards. And I was in a cav unit, so we got to, they spurred us. We got to wear gold spurs because we did a year in country with a cavalry unit, so we got to wear cavalry spurs.
Right.
And I've also got the big Robert Duvall hat from Apocalypse Now, that big
Love
blue
the smell of
Stetson.
Big Palm in the morning. Yeah, yeah.
I've got that.
Did you suffer any other injuries?
Just the.
I mean, that's bad enough,
Yeah.
honestly. But
I mean, it's military life. It really kind of kicks you put your body through so much. I had some balance issues after my second tour. I actually, for about 6 years, I walked with a cane because my balance was, and my hip was bothering me a lot. So I was walking with a cane for a while, and then after a while, I was like, I'm tired of walking with this thing. So I went to physical therapy, and I quit walking with it.
Nice.
So
Wow.
just took a little while to kind of get used to it, but I got tired of it because I'd lose it. I'd put it somewhere, and I'd get up and, oh, where to go?
Right.
Or, I'm trying to carry something, and I've got one hand this, and I was like, oh, I finally got tired of it. So I told my family, like, I'm going back to therapy. I'm tired of this silly thing.
Right.
It looked ridiculous.
After or during, psychologically, was there anything that you had that, like, you know what, I need some time to process this or process that, or?
Didn't have time.
Yeah.
Country, your mind's on one thing, and that's making sure you get home and making sure your buddy gets home. And
right.
When I finally got back to the States, I took some time I talked to the head shrinkers, but there's still this unwritten rule that, especially among the combat troops, like guys that are infantry, guys that are artillery, cavalry, they're like, oh, you don't do that. Something's wrong with you if you do that. It's like,
right.
Well, no kidding, something's wrong with me.
Right.
See guys blown up, see guys get shot. You go talk to the head shrinker.
Right. You had said 2 of your unit, though, had taken their lives? Is that what I understood?
Some guys that were on the base, they weren't directly attached to me,
Okay.
but when I was in Iraq, the day we got hit my truck got hit with an IED, we were on bed rest. Another part of our unit went up to another area, and they got hit with a truck bomb, and so we had to, all hands on deck, go up there, and we had to go bail them out and bring those guys home. And so it was Iraq was not combat heavy, but it was still a mess. And Afghanistan was combat heavy, but not quite as a mess.
Oh, wow.
What I couldn't stand about, though, we had to do such nerve-wrackingly silly things when we come back. We had to fill out round counts. How many bullets did you fire? Oh, you're in a firefight? How many bullets did you fire? I don't know. Hold on. Five. You shot 5? No, I've got 5 left. They're like,
wow.
well, how many did you go out with? 200. It's like, okay, thank you.
A lot of paperwork, huh?
Oh God, my lieutenant in Iraq was always pulling me. I was like, here, Owens, you know more about it, what was going on. You type it up and I'll sign it. I'm like, yes, sir.
Wasn't the same way in Afghanistan, though, right?
Nope, Afghanistan. I was a junior enlisted when I was in Iraq, so like I said, I followed my lieutenant around. But in Afghanistan, I'd been promoted to sergeant, and so I was kind of in charge of some stuff, and then I was the lone guy because the way the forward observers are set up, they are actually tasked out. We don't serve with an artillery battery. We're actually taken away from the artillery unit and we're put with an infantry unit or a cavalry unit. So it was me and my radio man. That was it. And then there was this, of course, I was with a light infantry unit, so we walked everywhere. We got trucks to a certain place, and then we walked up and down mountains a lot. So it was, as the forward observer, I was the second highest value target that the Afghans wanted to pop, because anybody with a radio they thought was important to. So a lot of sniper fire.
Oh, wow. And I would imagine, I mean, I get anxious about Dallas traffic. How do you get what's anxiety with that?
It's actually, it's a lot of it. It's mentally telling yourself you can do this. Now, the first 2 or 3 years when I got home from overseas and when I got out of the Army, I didn't go anywhere by myself. My mom usually would help me drive. When I got back into school, I jumped right out of the Army into school. I got out of the Army in April of 13 and started school in August at SMU. No time to chill. No time to really. It was time. It was time for me to start moving on, because I had a kid to take care of and I needed something to do. I was like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So I said, I'm going to be a history teacher. So I went back to school, get my history degree, got my certification to teach in Texas, and so did my undergrad and my graduate back to back. So it was, I started in 2013 and finished up in 17. So it was a straight shot.
Oh, wow. It's impressive.
It wasn't without its hiccups.
Yeah.
I was in a staff, I can laugh at this now, but at the time it was pretty terrifying. I was sitting in my statistics class, and I was sitting on the front row, and my statistics teacher was doing a PowerPoint presentation. And apparently the class was getting really annoying, so she played this sound on the PowerPoint that sounded like a mortar exploding. And from what I was told, they found me 2 buildings over behind a snack machine.
Oh,
wow. Because they said, my buddy was like, dude, you jumped under that desk, started screaming incoming, and you were distance and direction, and then you just looked at everybody and you bolted out of the room.
Oh, wow.
And the teacher told me the next class period, she says, I'm so sorry. She was almost in tears, just, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it. I didn't know either.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to happen either. She's like, I'll try not to do it. And I was like, you do you.
Right.
You do what you need to do. Just, if you're going to do that, just maybe wink at me or something, or wiggle your fingers, or sneeze.
Yeah.
Something that.
Is there any other, I think, PTSD or anything like that came across from that?
I mean, my VA records say that it's a TBI with some kinds of post-traumatic stress and anxiety and such. So, and it's such a misnomed thing. It's the body's way of dealing with unnatural things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just takes the body a time to, and with the right support system, it just takes time to get yourself back to a point where you can kind of function naturally. I mean, there's still things that kind of, my wife will sometimes look at me and go, honey, where'd you go? And then she'll think about it for a second. She's like, never mind, I know where you went.
Yeah.
Because she says sometimes you'll be talking and you'll just, and she's like,
Yeah.
so, you know, it took a while to kind of readjust to the world. I had a good support system. I had my grandmother who was there to kind of be my sounding board and also be very supportive and say, you got this, you know, or just remember you got your daughter there. And my daughter was always just hanging on to me and just so glad daddy was around. And
Mm-hmm. Wow. When you went over, and I have friends that I've talked to this about before too, but there was always a part of me that if I was in the military like yourself,
mm-hmm.
and I grew up just past the Vietnam War,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like glad got out of that area.
Yeah, no kidding.
But there was always a part of me wondered, could I have done it, and was I scared to do it, but then I would have felt so obligated to make sure that my buddies are all right.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a part of you that ever felt like, okay, here it comes, can I actually do this?
You get that every time you step out on mission. You're like, well, here we go. And you get to a point where it's where your training kicks in, and you realize, you know, because you realize you're not going anywhere for a year. You're there for a year. You're not going anywhere, so your mind just goes, okay, well, time to make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that sense of, you know, I'm here, I'm going to do it, but you never get that. There's the first time we went out on patrol, yeah, the back of the truck, the ramp drops, they tell you lock and load, and you chamber around, and that's the first time you go, oh man, it just got real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you can sit at the base, and you know you got all the barbed wire around you, and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But it's when you first go out, that first mission, and you lock and load, and it's just like, wow. It hits, and it hits, and you feel almost like dreamlike, because it still is like a dream. You know, it's been 15 years since I was in country, and it's still, there are days I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh man, I'm ready to go run 10 miles, and then, you know, my body is ready to go, and then another morning I'm like, oh God, I just got home.
Right.
The body's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not 20 anymore.
Do you have any nightmares or dreams or anything that? Or
It's
is it pretty well
still
gone?
It's still there sometimes, but I wake up and I've kind of gotten a way to sort of tell myself, okay, just remember to breathe, because this was stuff that I talked to with the behavioral health people. Is, you know, you wake up from it, and you know, you wake up and I look around and I breathe and I tell myself, I'm not in Iraq, I'm not in Afghanistan, and I look over, there's my wife, and I know I'm okay.
Right.
And then a couple of minutes, you know, sometimes I may get up and walk around, take a walk around the house, take a few deep breaths, and then go back and then I can go back to sleep. So, you know, they're still there.
Right.
You know, it never leaves. It's always going to be a part of you.
Right. You glad you went?
I'm very glad I went. Not because of anything political, you know, because
Right.
people are like, because my ex's family was virulently anti-war, anti-everything, you know, and her mother told me once before I left for Iraq, I can support you if you go to Afghanistan, but I can't support you if you go to Iraq. I'm like, well, guess what? I'm leaving in 2 weeks for Iraq. And she was like, would you like some crow? So that was always that was always an awkward chat.
Right. I would imagine so.
God, it was. She's like, dude, do you believe in what we're doing? I'm like, regardless of what I believe, I'm still going, and I'm still going to do my best, and I'm going to do a good job. The politics of it is way above me. That's, you know, I'm so low on the food chain that, you know, I'll be there and I will do my best. I will do my job. I will leave, and I will leave honorably. That was what I thought.
Right. Awesome. You had said, okay, so you were I came back and you said your ex-wife's parents. So I would imagine, this is just me being deductive because I went to Oklahoma, deductive that you have an ex-wife.
Yes.
And how long were you guys married, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's see. We were married just about 6 years.
Okay.
And it really wasn't what I would call like 6 years, because 2 years I was gone overseas. So we weren't, we were, long distance. And then there was multiple times where I was in the field a lot. Like I went to Fort Irwin, California for a month. I went to Fort Polk for a month. We would do rotations that were 2 and 3 weeks at a time. So taking all the time away that I was gone, we were married maybe 3.5 years, if you really want to put the time together.
Right.
And we were just people that should not have gotten married. We were two completely opposite in terms of religion, politics, ways of raising the kid, just ways of thinking. It was a nice idea, hey, you got somebody back home, write letters to, get a care package. Hey, great. But it was, and I came home and I needed support, and she really wasn't ready to give it.
Right.
She wanted me to be ready to go back to, the way it used to be, the honeymoon phase. And it wasn't happening. I wasn't getting well fast enough for her.
Right.
And then a lot of and then we decided we were going to get a divorce because it was not working out. But she wanted on her terms, basically make me become a weekend dad. And I was like, that's not going to happen. I want to see my kid. I want, and then so we were, divorced for, we were in court for like, 3.5 years.
Right.
And then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, though, your daughter being so close to you, that was like there's no way you were going to do a weekend thing.
No.
Yeah.
And I was very, both of us were very attached to, my daughter and myself, we were very attached to each other. And my ex used to complain. She said, it's not fair that you were gone for so long, but she loves you more.
Right.
And to her, my daughter was a pawn to get stuff. And
right.
So we were in, I won't get into the messy details, but it was about 3 years. And then we finally got custody was, 50-50 every other weekend, have her 3 days of the week and things like that. So it worked well for the time. And then eventually my daughter said some things that had happened to her. And so people were getting involved, and eventually my daughter said no. And CPS said, no, you don't have to ever see your mother again. So my daughter has been with me full time for about 3 years now.
Oh, that must be nice, huh?
It's been great. She's been so happy. Her life is so much better for her now. She's always reminding us, Dad, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm not over there. And we're like.
So you're remarried now?
Yes.
Okay. So how does daughter get along with?
They have formed a very strong bond. My daughter, even once in a while, will call her mom.
Nice.
She has really bonded with her in terms of not making her feel like, well, you're just the stepmother. No, she's been very, very welcoming, very warm to her. And it was it's a big step for anybody, for a husband or a wife to come into an instant family.
Right, right.
My wife and I had actually met at SMU in the Teachers College. We met we were both getting our master's degree in education, and we met in class and started kind of talking. And I wasn't the easiest person to talk to when I first came home, because I was still very suspicious of people. I was very kind of hypervigilant, and
right.
And as soon as class was over, I was in the car heading home. I wanted to get home to my kid and my mom, and I had work to do. And she kept trying to invite me out, and I'm like, no, I got stuff to do when I get home. And my mom finally told me, go out, go do something.
Right.
So we met up for dinner and a movie, and just started getting a little more interested in each other. And I told her, now, if we're really going to date, I need us to wait at least another month. And she says, well, why is that? And I said, because I want to make sure that the ink on my divorce is dry. I want to make sure that there is nothing of that old life to hold, to kind of be sticking around. So she's like, I appreciate that. Because she had always said, oh, I don't believe in step families and things like that. She was really on the, and then she realized maybe not all dads are like you. She said, you fought for your kid. You wanted to be in your kid's life. You just didn't pop off and say, oh, well, I'll just be a weekend dad. And here's your check, bye. He's like, and she really had never encountered that.
Yeah.
So those two have really been, sort of supportive of each other. They go out and say, and my daughter will even come and says, Dad, we're doing girl stuff today. You're not invited. Like, I don't want to get my nails painted anyway, thank you.
That's awesome, though.
You want to go try on dresses? That's your business. She's like, well, Dad, what about you? I'm like, I don't think I have the legs for dresses, thank you.
Yes. Plus the shaving part's got.
Yeah, I know. It just itches and so.
Okay. So your wife and you guys have been married how long?
Officially been married 2 years. We've been together about 10 years.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And like I said, we waited until we had finished, my divorce was finalized, and then we started dating, and then we dated for a while, and then there was a little bit more of a custody battle that we were still going on. So I still didn't want to get married while that was going on. So that finally was finalized, and Elizabeth came to stay with us. That's when we decided to get married.
And what did your mom think of that?
My mom was just ecstatic. She's like, you met a great woman. She's smart. She's funny. She has good family values with us. She really likes being around my family. And so it's been a really good addition. She's been welcoming. My family's been very welcoming to her, and she loves cooking. She loves eating my mom's cooking. My mother still cooks at 93 years old.
Wow.
And then them farm girls.
Now, what are her parents still alive? Or?
Yeah, her family. She actually was born in Bombay, India, and they immigrated when she was 8. Okay. And they moved around. They first moved to California, and then they moved down to Houston. So her family, her mom and dad, run a business down in Nederland, Texas. The most country, non-Indian area you could possibly be in. I mean, I was like, you picked of all the places, you picked
right smack down.
Beaumont, Port Arthur, Texas.
Yeah.
Oil and just country, and I'm like, good on you.
Yeah.
Her sister, she has an older sister who's a former nuclear technician in the Navy. So, but yeah, I mean, we get along with her family for the most part. You kind of talk with it, but they're so busy all the time. We don't really.
You don't get chastised for going to war or something like that? Like,
nah.
No, I didn't think so.
No, her family was actually when they heard that I was in Afghanistan, her dad shook my hand and says, thank you for what you did.
Right.
He was very, very proud of that.
Nice.
And mom was. So they were pretty much they're very patriotic. They went through, it took them, I think they said 14 years to get their citizenship.
Oh,
but she tells me she still has the flag that she got, and she's got her certificate that says, be it known that, Nivedita Meridia is now having, I forget what all it says, but is now a full naturalized citizen of the United States of America. And she talked about how proud she was of it. And
that's awesome.
Has pictures of her holding it and just big grins, and the whole family's, big grins. And
that's awesome.
They love this country. She's still very, very, very proud of India, but she says, she's always like, well, but India's got its problems. Like, well, that's why you left.
Right. True. What's the best, speaking of parents, what's the best piece of advice your parents gave you? Or one of the best?
I don't know. Dad was the guy that always gave me the sense of, he raised me on how to be a gentleman, how to be a man, how to know things. He says, if you can't figure it out first because it'll be easier for you, because the more you're trying to figure it out, the more you'll learn.
Mm-hmm.
and then that will make life a lot easier on you. My grandmother taught me how to treat a woman, like how that when you go out on a date, you treat that woman like she could possibly be the mother of your children. And so that always stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
How to be look at her as, she could, even if she wasn't, you never know. Right. So mom was always very much, you never know, but you still need to be a gentleman with her. And dad, like I said, dad taught me how to basically be very self-sufficient. And he said, if you don't know it, go look it up. He was very much one to tell me, if you don't know it, go look it up. We had all the encyclopedias
with notes in them. Exactly.
Yeah. So he would point and say, if I'd say, well, Dad, what about this? Go look under number 4. Thanks, Dad.
Before Google.
Exactly.
There was
Tell me that.
Good point. That's all right. Was there ever a story your parents never found out about that you were kind of like, I hope they don't find out about this one? Like growing up or?
Well, the only thing that, it was the Army. I never told them what I did in the Army.
Oh,
I
sure.
never.
Yeah.
But we were kind of a close-knit family. We were fairly, being the only child, there were no secrets. It was a small house, so there was very little. And plus, mom was active in the PTA, so everybody knew everybody.
You were in trouble there.
There were no. It was like somebody come up. Oh boy. So I learned very quickly. Don't mess up. Don't do something, because we were also Catholic. We grew up Catholic, and I was an altar boy and sang in the choir.
Oh yeah.
So grew up, and my grandfather grew up in the old church with Latin and all that stuff. So he was still fairly old guard, and family was important. So I guess one of the things it says, don't embarrass your family, because even if we never find out about it, it'll still be, you'll still know. So that was one of the things. Don't embarrass us. Don't embarrass yourself. Do the right thing. Because even if we don't know, you'll still have to look in the mirror and know
right.
That's what happened.
Great advice.
Yeah.
That sounds really smart. You said that you got your master's, which is way above my pay grade in history.
No, actually my master's in education.
In education, okay.
Yes.
So did you go into education or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So as soon as I got my master's degree, I started teaching in Dallas. I started teaching at Thomas Jefferson High School. I taught there for 2 years. Yes, sir. Yeah. My first teaching job was to teach. I got hired on, and then I was given a book and told, "Here, look the book over, and you start Monday. Start teaching. Good luck."
Oh wow.
I had to start teaching AP Gov and ESO World History.
High school teacher. I mean, I guess you went through Afghanistan and you could deal with it, but wow, high school teacher.
Oh, there are days where I'm like, at least I had a rifle and body armor in Iraq. Here, it's like go into a room with 34 little piranhas and good luck.
Did your wife? Did she go into teaching?
She did. She became a. I got certified to teach secondary, so I can teach middle school and high school. She is actually EC through 6, so she's predominantly elementary.
Oh.
But she did get certified because she had gotten she's fluent in Chinese, and so the school that we worked at needed a new Chinese teacher. So she went back to school, got her certification, bilingual Chinese, and so she taught middle school Chinese for about 5 years.
Oh wow.
And she liked it, but 5 years she was ready for a change. So she's now teaching 5th grade math and science, and she is just loving it every day.
That's awesome.
Loves it.
So Arabic, Chinese. Can she speak Indian or whatever?
She still speaks. She speaks Hindi.
Hindi, right? Sorry.
And she understands her family is actually from a state called Gujarat, so she understands the local language, and there's like 3 languages she knows. She knows Urdu, Hindi, and Gujarati.
And I have trouble understanding people from Texas, so wow.
She still does too.
Yeah.
She said, now my house, my grandfather, his grandfather was actually Swiss German, and so he grew up speaking Swiss German, and then kind of on and off, and then also learned, of course, English.
Right.
And then my grandmother's family, they were Swiss German as well, and then so I started learning German sort of as a second language pretty early on. Dad loved languages too. Dad self-taught himself Italian.
Wow.
Because he got bored. He'd sit there 2 or 3 hours every night, he didn't have Babel, he didn't have Duolingo, he just had learn Italian in 10 minutes a day. So he would sit there for 2 hours a night, after everybody gone to bed, and I'd hear him on his tape recorder taping himself speaking Italian and German, and so.
Wow. Really wow, because I have spare time, maybe Netflix, and this speaking a whole another language.
Well, I'm spending some time relearning Korean.
Relearning Korean?
Well, I learned a little Korean when I was in the Army. We were thinking we were going to have to, China was doing some crazy stuff, so we thought, and then North Korea had been setting off a few bombs, so we thought, well, we're going to Korea. So I had an officer tell me, oh, let's go learn Korean. I'm like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do as I'm told.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Man, okay. When was a struggle in your life? And I imagine I've heard a bunch of them, but was there something that was a struggle in your life?
Well, other than, fighting for my daughters,
yeah.
Probably that. I mean, the coming home from the war thing, that in itself is just sort of expected. I'd already kind of prepared myself mentally that was going to happen, but the whole fighting, you don't expect to come home from the war and jump right into a divorce, and
right.
And a pretty messy one too. So that was probably one of the struggles, and then dealing with my father's suicide was pretty rough too. That was something that you really never get over.
Right.
Because we had really started to connect. We were going out to, he and I were going out to dinner. We go to movies, sit and have a few beers, and he was really like, oh, I'm on a level with him I never thought I would be. It was always, he was the older brother, and I saw him once in a while, but no, he was really wanting to sit down and I guess know me, and I guess I should have, hindsight 2020. He was just getting ready to make peace with the world before he left, and that was rough.
Yeah. Where were you at that time?
I was. This was 2020, so I'd only been out of high school. I was at Richland when it happened. I was still in college at the time when it happened. He was living actually over strangely enough, he was actually living over in Lavon.
And who told you?
We got a phone call from from my stepmother that he had attempted, and so they had stopped him once, and then I guess everybody went to bed, and we got another phone call from the Wiley police, because I guess Lavon was under Wiley's jurisdiction at the time, and so the Wiley police had called us and told us, and we figured they didn't give us any details, so we go out there. And the Wiley police had circled the house, and detectives came out and said, hey, we can't let you go in. And we're all just freaking out. My mom's, broken down. And
right.
I'm standing there thinking, well, I got to be the strong one now, because everybody else was falling apart. And there's me just, all right, well.
Yeah.
So, stoicism at its finest.
Yeah. I remember when my father passed, I didn't cry for months. Didn't think about it. And I felt bad that I didn't cry. And then one day I watched a movie with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson about, I forgot what it's called, but I watched it, and when I was done, I bawled like a baby for like 2 days straight. Kind of got it out on me. Was there
Yeah.
ever a moment? I mean, you had to be stoic, which is like,
Yeah.
and this was before you went into
This
the
was before I
services.
left for the Army.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there every moment where you said, okay, this is a little bit more than I wanted to handle?
I don't know. It really didn't hit. It was a strangely, it was about 2-3 years, and then it was. I was listening to some of the music because my dad was a big, long hair, beard, and he Led Zeppelin and Jim Morrison, all that stuff. And I think I was listening to Painted Black, and it hit like a baseball bat, and I just sat down and laid it all out. My mom's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I will be."
Yeah. Wow.
And the day that we found out that he died, that was the first time in 60 years that my grandfather touched rum. It hit him that hard that he didn't care. We stopped off at the liquor store, and he picked up a fifth of Bacardi, and I was like, "Well, Dad, I thought you hated that stuff." He's like, "Boy, at this time, I don't give a damn." So first we started out with rum and Coke, and then it just ended up we were doing straight shots.
Yeah.
We finished it off pretty quick.
Yeah. Wow. What would you say was one of your biggest regrets?
I would say I know it may sound a little callous, but my daughter's mother, like I said, we shouldn't have been. We were two people that should never have gotten married, but it's not so much a regret. It's we shouldn't have, but then my daughter wouldn't be here.
Right.
But I guess I regret maybe not trying hard and maybe not trying harder to keep the marriage together. And I did. I tried for at least 6 months. I tried to stick with it, but eventually it just got to the point where it's like this is pushing the ocean back with a push broom. It's not. I'd say, yeah, that's probably it. And
that's a good analogy. I like that one, pushing the ocean back. I should use that one sometime. Then, okay, perspective. What are 3 qualities of Jason you admire most?
A strong sense of honor, family, a strong sense of taking care of my family, being there for my family, and dependability. My mother said that I should have been a psychiatrist or a good priest because people were always coming to me and saying, "Hey, I got problems. Hey, I got this," and she says, "But nobody would ever ask us that. So you should have been a priest or a psychiatrist or a counselor because people seem to find you and you have the patience to put up with them." Well, I don't seem to be putting up with them. I generally feel bad. I actually had intended, before becoming a history teacher, I'd actually gone, when I started SMU, was to work at the VA and be a counselor. But the more I worked at the VA with these guys and going through what I went through, I was like, I can't do this. I got enough on my plate. And then bringing because my mother would say, "You would bring it home." She says, "And you can't do that with this stuff. It's like a surgeon or a heart surgeon or somebody that loses somebody. You would bring it home and you'd carry it with you." And she said, it's not something you can do.
Didn't you say earlier this is a little off topic. Didn't you say earlier you had dogs, but they were rescues?
Both of my German Shepherds are rescues. We wanted to. My wife and I are firm believers in adopt, don't shop. And we got our house over here in Wiley, and it was big enough to have, because I love German Shepherds. They're my dog. They're my dog that seems to like me and I like them. And so we went to the Dallas shelter and we went through a couple, and we got this one goofball that he picked us, and we said, yeah, you're going home with us. And then during the day, we have to be gone teaching, and so he was in the backyard a lot of times by himself, and he'd come home and he'd just be so full of energy, like, oh, I'm so glad to see you. But so my wife and I talked about it. I said, we need to get him a playmate or something. So we went back, we took him, and he went through a couple, and there was this one, the one that we have now. They hit it off. They were very rambunctious with each other. And the people was like, oh yeah, they're getting along just fine. We're like, okay, bring them home.
What were the names?
So the boy, that's our first one. That was Gunter.
Gunter. Okay.
He's a people dog. He loves pets and scratches and licks and hugs and things like that. He's a people's dog. Very uncharacteristic of a German Shepherd. But the girl, we brought her home. That's Nova. She's the black one. She's more of your typical shepherd. She's very kind of standoffish a little bit until I look at her and go, it's okay. So, yep, there are part of our family as much.
What is the goal in your life?
To live on a small plot of land somewhere far, far away and live in peace. In peace and quiet with my wife, and hopefully the dogs will still be there. And yeah.
Stars at night.
Exactly.
Yeah. Not as bright as
yes,
Iraq, but in there still.
Wow. But yeah, some place quiet to, being born and raised in Garland, and sort of always being in that little. I know Garland's not what you call a small town, but it still has that kind of had that small city feel. But I wanted something even more so. Even more just kind of removed, and my nearest neighbor's 5 miles away or something like that.
Right. Be nice. Okay, so my dash story is a little bit about when you're born, they have a date, and then they have the dash, and then they have the day they die. So they have, you're born, the dash story, which is here, and hopefully a long time from now, there'll be a date when you died. But what would you like your epitaph to be?
There's a poem that I'm very, very fond of. It's by Stevenson. It's called Requiem, and I would like it to say, "Here happily did I live, and happily did I die."
Very nice.
It's always been one of my favorite poems. It's very brief, but it's the last two lines are the ones that are always quoted the most. Here he lies where he longed to be. Home is the sailor, home from the sea, and home is the hunter, home from the hill. And it's always been one of my favorites.
Nice. I tell you, I absolutely love this. This was awesome. I love getting to know you, and the stories were amazing.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you all today, and thank you, Jason, for joining us. If you like this episode, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave a review. I imagine there's a lot of them, and we'll see you next time on My Dash Story.